Oh, yeah, and they get it immediately right away. Because I used to fight them. You can't fight them anymore. 3 days, that's all you have. Who has time for that? Signing in, then going in town. It's not worth it. Thank you. We have to wait for one more. She's running a few minutes late. We're live, so we have one attendant that's running a few minutes late, stuck in traffic. Yes, still? No. That was you. That was you. You're here. I didn't hear what you said. Okay. Right. I wish you the best. It was like, how can you miss it? How do you live? We're live. Perfect. We all settled? Perfect. She's here, so we're ready to go. So it's today's September 21st, 2023. We are okay. 3, and we are calling the Master Steering. Oh. September 21st, 2023. We're calling the Master Steering Committee to order, and I'm going to open the meeting with attendance. So Liz? Justine? Not here. I can't see them. What's your name? Flavio. Just us. Okay. Peter Herbst.
Here.
David Cunningham.
Here.
Shelley North. Here. Julia Flaherty.
Here.
Amy Holmes. Here. Jem Wadland. She's out. And,
Raina Rubin.
yep, Raina Rubin. Not here.
Joe Reynolds.
And Joe Reynolds is absent as well. And Tom Kent. The MSPCA members and staff announcements today, the discussions and comments of the draft master plan, and the public questions and comments. We ready to proceed?
No comments from staff this evening.
We have a public comment.
We're gonna take the agenda in order, correct?
Correct.
So we'll do the discussion, presentation on the draft, and then you can turn it over to the public?
Perfect.
Yeah.
If
they're
you don't mind waiting,
individual
sir.
items. It's not one big, okay.
If you, yes, sir. A little closer, Flavio.
Is this fine? Okay, that's hello.
Better, thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is Flavio Villa. I'm the community planner for land use and urban design at JM Goldson. So today we're going to go over the draft master plan, and please feel free to interrupt me anytime you need. So I don't know if you have already a set of comments, so you prefer us to go page by page, and we can be commenting. Is there any preference?
I'm good with that. Everybody?
I'm
Page-
sorry, could you explain that again? Are we going to go page by page?
Yeah,
or-
maybe like if you have a set of comments, or you prefer us like to go like page by page.
I think
Whatever the group wants to do.
we're
Yeah.
good page by page.
Okay, perfect.
We have a comment? in the
Yes,
back?
sir?
If you're going to make comments, can we just have them at the podium,
Can you come to
please?
the microphone so we can hear you? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Do we have handouts? Because the agenda on the web was aged.
Yes. Liz is going to grab you an agenda. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks. Okay, so this is the cover. Yes.
Right off the bat, I have to tell you, I don't like the cover. It, to me, is really, it doesn't scream Braintree. There's nothing really distinguishing about it. I was hoping we would have something that would be a little bit more of an iconic, recognizable feature of the town. I know this is Sunset Lake and sort of an aerial view, but I think a picture maybe on ground level of Sunset Lake looking across the lake in the fall toward the church. I've seen some lovely pictures like that. Or my other suggestion would be possibly a picture of Pond Meadow Park, or even a picture of the town hall or the French house across the street. Something that's more recognizable that is specifically Braintree. I could show someone that picture and it could be any place.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Amy, I'm sorry, do you prefer to call the participations? Because I shouldn't be calling them, I think.
Yeah, you need to recognize the
Yes,
speakers,
I would
please.
recognize the speaker first.
Okay.
Sorry, Liz.
That's okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yes. Flavia?
Okay, thanks. The next page after the cover is a letter. We spoke about this in our last meeting, and we're like speaking about a letter of the mayor. Are we fine with the photo and the letter with this? Okay, perfect. And then we have the contents, which is, I don't think I need to explain this, the
No.
contents. Do you have a chance to read the introduction? Are there any comments on the text?
Yes. Peter?
So I have a comment on first paragraph, second sentence, with no disrespect to people that came before us, that the line talking about thousands of years just really stood out to me as odd. And, you know, right on the cover, Braintree was incorporated in 1640, less than 400 years ago. So my suggestion would be something along the lines of, since 1640, comma, Braintree offers a unique blend. I think we did a good job in page 14, talking more about like the historical and cultural resources. And I just don't think we need to include the thousands of years comment in the first paragraph.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else?
Okay, thanks. Then the next spread is an explanation of our planning process. Yes, oh, sorry.
Yes, Liz?
Okay, so on page 9, in phase 2, towards the bottom of the paragraph, it says, after collecting the insight of more than 2,400 points of engagement. It references that number, 2,400, on page 9. And then if we go to page 10, in the bottom left-hand corner, in the engagement process, it says we have over 2,500 touch points with the Braintree community throughout this process. Can you clarify should those numbers be the same or should they be different?
Yes, and I'm sorry for the confusion. So if we add the numbers in phase 1 and 2, we're going to have a little more than 2,400. And if we add the rest of the numbers in phase 3, we're going to add more than 2,500.
Okay.
So that's why the text in phase 2 says after more than 2,400 points.
Okay.
But we can remove that.
No, I just didn't understand
okay.
the difference, but I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay. And this spread explains our whole planning process, the 4 phases. Phase 4, like we still like haven't finished writing everything, so that's the reason why there are like some excess there, because we are in phase 4 right now. And then we continue with the engagement process, in which we explain all the touch points that we had with the Braintree community per phase. Like especially like the engagement methods that we used and how many touch points per engagement method. And also like some pictures of the community forums or the roadshows or the working sessions.
Yes, Melissa.
If I may, through the chair, just also pointing out on page 9, there's a gap in the phase dates. So phase 2 ends on December 2022, and then phase 3 doesn't start till March. So we just need to adjust those dates. Obviously, this has been a continuous phasing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any comments in this one? Are we fine? Okay. And in the next chapter, in chapter 3, we summarize the existing conditions report. So this is the chapter that is called Braintree in Context. The existing conditions has 8 chapters, so here we have like 8 subsections, right? Like land use, housing and demographics, economic development, historical and cultural resources, open space, transportation, sustainability, and facilities.
Yes, Liz.
Okay, on page 13, under housing and demographics, the first paragraph reads, the population growth from 2010 to 2020 outpaced housing unit growth with a 10% increased population compared to a 2% increase in housing units. And I know that we had letters that were supposed to be examined and put into this, and as far as I'm aware, there was a decennial census where the housing units were 15,077 in 2020, and in 2010, the number was 14,260, which makes the growth in housing 6%, not 2%. And I was under the impression that was going to be corrected.
Yes, so what happened is like we made that revision like last month. And at the time that the existing conditions report was written, we used the American Community Survey because that was the best data available at that time. And changing like that data to the 2020 census would have been like changing like basically all the reports. And we addressed that comment as that we used like the best available data at that time, and those were the results.
Okay, this is an inaccurate statement. I think it should be removed. I mean, correct it or remove it.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to keep it in there.
Yes. Shelley North. Mike?
Hello? There we go. Flavio, so are you saying that you pulled information from a certain corporation on a certain date and a certain report, and that's where most of this information is coming from? So if not, would be referencing two different reports at two different data points? Is that what you're saying?
By the time the existing conditions report was written, we used the American Community Survey
Yeah.
5-year estimates from 2016 to 2021. I'm sorry, 2017 to 2021,
Okay.
which is also like a U.S. Census source.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. And then,
Liz?
so where did the other data come from?
This is from the state of Massachusetts, census data.
Okay.
So it's accurate data.
Just-
I just think we should have correct factual data in here. This is not correct.
Okay.
Yes, Julia?
Would it be difficult to update the data using current resources?
Thing is that would mean that we should like update like the whole existing conditions report, which is a phase that we have like already closed, and that is like a background document that has like led to the rest of the phases, to the goals, the strategies, to this master plan, and that's kind of like not in the scope of the discussion right now.
Can we use an sorry.
No,
Yes,
I
Melissa?
have a suggestion through the chair, because we've already accounted for all of these numbers. Maybe the paragraph can just be adjusted to just in that specific paragraph to reference the community survey, which is done in between the US Census that is done every 10 years. And then we could just include the number for 2020, which is the 15,077. So just add, don't go back and redo the entire existing conditions report, but to
Include.
clarify this paragraph with supplementing it with that data point.
Liz?
But I think when you're talking about a 2% increase in housing units, that's inaccurate. And so I think that phrase should be stricken from this. I just don't think we should be putting something in there that's not
Well,
accurate.
if we reference the data point to the community survey, and then we use and we also include the 1577 and do that percent, so they would both be in there.
So are you going to put the housing growth at 6% and not 2% in there as well?
It would be both.
It would be both.
It
So
would be
you'll
both.
reference both?
It would be both.
Okay.
Yeah, just adding another data point to that
Okay.
paragraph.
Okay, thank you. Also, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Liz?
Also in economic development, in the first paragraph, it says, Braintree's population is growing and becoming younger, wealthier, and more educated. The second sentence reads, the 65 to 74 age group is projected to grow significantly while an influx of workers increases the town's daytime population by over 7,000. It just sounds a little confusing to me. It sounds like you're saying the younger group is bigger, but the older group is bigger.
Okay, we can reframe that.
I'm sorry?
We can reframe that. Like, these paragraphs come directly from the summaries of each chapter in the existing conditions report. So we can just like reframe this. And
Okay. It's just, it's confusing. If it could be clarified, that would be good. Thank you.
Yes, Julia?
I would just like to make a suggestion to clarify that, because I agree that it is, it can be more direct and more clear. I think you can just say, although the 65 to 74 age group is projected to grow significantly, comma, an influx of workers will increase the town's daytime population by over 7,000, making the town,
Well,
which contributes to making the town younger, or which is what contributes to the town, to making the town younger.
thanks.
anyone disagree with rephrasing? Yes, Liz?
Well, it says our population is growing. So are we referring to the worker population or the resident population? I think there's a little difference.
In economic development, yeah. It's economic development, right?
Well, if I
Yeah.
may through the
Yes,
chair,
Melissa.
these three sentences are independent of one another. So we're talking about how our younger population is growing, period. We're also going to see an increase in our older population, period. And the third point in this paragraph is that we do have a daytime population of workforce that aren't necessary. So the three different, they're not to be taken together. They're three completely different points that are all true. They're just referencing different things. I don't think they're trying to compete with one another or contradict one another. They're just three statements that are valid statements.
We can also like separate those ideas, like in different paragraphs or something.
I was just going to suggest separating them as to saying the three different segregations that we have.
Bullet points instead,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
might work.
so they read separate instead of together.
Everybody okay with that?
We can continue to the next 5?
Yes.
To this one? I think this. Oh,
Yes, Liz?
On page 14, in the section on transportation, the first paragraph, let me see. Where does it start? Page
is it 15? Wait.
Let's see.
Oh, I see.
These are spreads.
It's a double, okay. I'm like, I don't have 14.
Okay, in the first paragraph, about two-thirds of the way down, it starts with many employed residents live outside of Braintree, parentheses 90%, and a large portion of Braintree residents work outside of the town, 87.4%. I find that to be a confusing sentence. Many employed residents live outside of Braintree. Residents would have to live inside of Braintree.
Yes.
Right.
David?
Yeah, it looks like the correction could be just indicating that they work outside of Braintree.
But then in the next sentence, they talk about a large portion of Braintree residents work outside of the town.
I think it's the people that work in Braintree, 90% of them don't live here, and then 87.4% of the people that live here work somewhere else. It's just a,
Yeah, we should clarify that.
just a
that-
word,
that sentence.
word missing
So
there.
many who are employed in Braintree live outside of Braintree, 90%?
I would just take out residents, yep.
Okay, thank you. And then also on page 14, in that same section, red line, Braintree's red line stations saw an average of, I won't go through the numbers, the ridership dropped by 66% during the COVID-19 pandemic between 2019 and 2020, and has since rebounded, showing a 23% increase since 2020 to 2022. Should we state that it is still, ridership is still down by 43%?
I can add it, I don't know.
I have a hard time with that one because the red line has had so many issues. So of course it's down because they can't track it accordingly. Yes, Julia.
I think if you qualified it with just a partial rebound, that would solve them. That would make it much clearer.
Everybody okay with partial?
That's good.
Yes, Flavia?
I think Shelley had you had your hand up.
Oh, Shelley, I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I think that it was the second paragraph when it said nearly 70% of Braintree residents commute to work by driving alone or carpooling. I mean, was that taken pre-pandemic? Because I would say that 90% of my friends that used to commute all work from home still. So is that, where did that data come from? Is that like 2019, 2020, or is that current? I just was questioning it.
It's probably like before spring last year when this thing
Okay.
was written.
Yeah. Okay.
But to be honest, like right now, I don't know if it's like pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. Like,
Yeah.
I can go over that.
Yeah, it just seemed a little high to me.
Okay.
Yes, Shelley.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just rubbing my eye.
I'm seeing it out of the corner of my eye.
Yes, Liz. Page 15, facilities and services. The second sentence, most educational buildings are outdated and in need of modernization, which is partially true, but what bothers me is we just had a major renovation and an addition put on the East Middle School in the not-so-distant past, and we also have a brand-new South Middle School facility that just opened this fall of 2023, and I think that those 2 points should be in this paragraph.
Should be highlighted.
Those need to be mentioned.
Maybe we could mention, we could say, aside from the East and South Middle School
Projects.
most educational buildings, because the rest of them are tough.
I'd be good with that, yeah.
But I think it's very remiss to not include those two buildings in that.
These are the East and South Middle School, right?
Easton.
Yeah,
East Middle
Eastern-
School had an addition and a major renovation. And we have a brand-new South Middle School, which opened in the fall of 2023.
I think it's okay to mention East and South because they really are beautiful schools and they are exceptions to the overall story. But they need to be, the thrust of the comment is that our school system is aging and in need of repair and replacement. And although those are notable exceptions and it is worth noting them, I don't think that, I don't want the main thrust of the point to be lost in the accolades surrounding those buildings, because it's a short paragraph.
I like what Melissa said, aside from, Melissa had said, aside from East and South Middle School, like the new renovations of East and South Middle School.
Right.
Then went into that. I thought
Well,
that
it's
was good.
brand new South and the renovations and addition on East. I mean, they weren't being mentioned.
Oh, yeah, no, I said, but I
Yeah.
like the way Melissa said it, aside
Yeah.
from those two schools.
Right.
The other
I
11
mean, that
or
is
whatever.
pretty major.
And in the next spread, this is the community vision
Yep.
that was defined on
I think
phase
we
3.
spent a lot of time on this. Looks good to me.
Okay. And in the next spread, we have the future land use map, and it has been fixed, revised as what we spoke in the last meeting. So we have that new multimodal improvement area in Washington Street. And after that, there's like an explanation of each of these areas, the ones that are numbered from 1 to 10. Yeah.
Yes, Liz?
On
Thank you.
page 20, number 1, it refers to Woods Road. It's Wood Road, no S.
Okay.
And number 7, the landing, at the end of it, it talks about economic growth and urban renewal efforts. There is a big stress in this writing that it's a suburban town, and I think the word urban should not be used there. I think we could call revitalization efforts would be a better choice of words instead of urban renewal. That's in number 7. And also in number 9, traffic management and urban development. The town residents expressed that they did not want to be urbanized. Again, we talked about suburban, so I think maybe we could just call it redevelopment.
Redevelopment.
Amy?
Yes, David.
Thanks. At our last meeting, I brought up the lack of any multimodal improvement area addressing the fact that there's another Red Line station that serves the northern part of the town, despite the fact that it's in Quincy. And there's no mention of that here that I see. Yeah.
Partnering.
If
Melissa?
I may, through the chair.
Yes.
To Member Cunningham, are you suggesting extending that connection up, like in front of Archie's, to that basically the town line where you then can go and get to the red line, the little gate there, right over the town line?
Something to that effect, yes. I mean, that station is right at the split. It's got
Oh,
a
yeah.
much bigger parking garage, and it's much closer to the commercial entities in that part of the town. So, not being able to get from the Quincy Adams T station to Wood Road or Forbes Road or the Braintree Hill Office Park or the South Shore Plaza it's a weakness, and I think we should try to address it.
Okay. Are we fine with it? And after this spread, we have a zoom-in map of the Braintree Square and the South Braintree Square, and basically like all that corridor. And then we have the planning framework, where we explain what the vision is, where the core themes are, and where the elements are, according to Massachusetts regulation, and the goals and the strategies. And also in this spread, we introduce two things. We introduce two sets of icons, the elements icons and the strategy types icons. And these icons, then we use them in the rest of the document to basically explain our strategies and explain our core themes.
Yes,
Could we just, look back at the map on page 22?
Mm-hmm.
There's a long blue dotted line that's marked as the Manattawit River Trail. And I just am trying to make sure I understand, is that the proposed extent of the trail?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's the,
Yeah.
okay, so that doesn't
That's a
exist.
dream. That's a dream.
Right, so are we representing what exists or what we
Oh, no, this is
want?
the future.
This is,
Yeah, future land use. Yep.
okay. Okay,
We'll get
Not quite there yet. We're getting there.
okay.
Yes,
So, not to be raising controversy, but if the future is depicted on this page, perhaps we should keep the section of Braintree east of the highway on this map unless we're going to sell it to Weymouth or something. My neighborhood's not in there.
Dave, are you suggesting to just, I mean, this is just a blow-up?
Yeah.
Do you not want the blow-up?
I think the blow-up, leaving out one of the 3 squares in the town sends a terrible message to the people who live in that section of the town. A lot of them feel like they've been forgotten anyway, so if we're going to address this blow-up, maybe it should be a smaller blow-up, or maybe add another part of it by putting another page in to address that section of the town.
If I may, through the
Yes.
chair, I have a suggestion. Maybe this particular page, instead of this with the table, we could just have the map full sheet, how we were reviewing in the, you know, we had the future land use map to look at, and then we could just put the table on the next page,
I think that might be a good idea.
and then scrap the blow-up, so that this plan would actually be bigger, it would be the full page.
Yeah, but things that this, so this is like a booklet, right? So this is like this.
Oh, so that is a full
So it
page.
is already a full page.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, it will be a lot bigger, maybe
But
that'll
no,
be.
so yeah, this is gonna be like this size,
Yeah, okay.
right?
So then maybe we don't even need the blow-up. I keep forgetting it's,
Yes, Shelley?
I didn't have anything on page 24, 25, but I did on page 26. And maybe just because it's not in my neighborhood, but St. Michael's Church. I don't know a St. Michael's Church in Braintree.
there is no St. Michael's.
Oh,
No, that's a mistake. Okay.
That's not,
I don't think that's a church in Braintree.
No, that's
No,
that
not
looks like
Braintree.
Quincy Center.
no.
I don't recognize that church. I
That
don't
looks
know a
like
lot of
the
churches.
Crane Library.
I think St. Francis would be a good one to
Yeah,
put in
St.
there.
Francis would be a nice one, yeah.
Good eye, Shelley.
But I mean, that would be a second church, right? We already have Old Souls. We could do St. Francis, or we could do maybe, do we have any of like the community beer garden? I know we have one of the farmer's market.
Honestly, they were kind of pressed for pictures. There's not a lot of.
Oh, there isn't? What about the patch? The patch doesn't have a bunch? That they're willing to share?
We did a query through the mayor's office, because they have most of the pictures. But if there's certain pictures, I had said to Jen, I'll go out and take pictures if I have to. So if we
Right.
want to substitute that,
What about the Greek Orthodox Church? Could we list that?
That's a tough one to get a pic, it's very
Oh, because
big
it's
and
so
spread out.
big.
What about St. Clair's, up in the Highlands?
I mean, I think if we're going to replace it with the church, I think St. Francis being in one of the
Sure.
squares, and it's probably the most picturesque. I just was thinking 2 churches was a lot, but
To be honest, like we can replace like all the photos that you want because like we made this document with the pictures that we had.
yeah.
But if you don't like one picture, like we can completely replace it. We don't have any strong
Yeah,
preference
no, that's
for
okay.
any photo.
because I also know that one of the things we talked about in the last meeting is one of Braintree's prides, right, is its sports, right? I mean, and the fields, either the kids on the soccer field or, you know, a hockey game or
Baseball.
baseball, like those are big, big things in Braintree that brings so many people together. I think
Flag
when-
football night is massive.
Yeah, flag football night's massive. So one of those things maybe that bring like the younger generation and what brings the community together from young to older, you know, from children to grandparents. Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
So like a sports-orientated photo?
Yeah,
Okay, and I would welcome any members that have any pictures if they want to share them.
okay.
Most of my pictures are of subsurface drainage systems, so
Yeah,
I don't think
I'll
we
have to
want
go
a
back
whole,
a couple of years for
I don't
flag.
think we need a whole book with pictures of sand and stone, so.
Right. I agree, that's a good idea, though.
Okay, so, and in this spread, we summarize the next 5 chapters, which is what we call our core themes. These have like the same names that we had in the strategy document that we reviewed the last meeting. And these 5 chapters, each of them have their own elements. So basically what we try to say is that these chapters or these core themes summarize some of the elements, or include, better said, some of the elements that the Massachusetts regulations ask for a master plan, which are the elements that we introduced in the previous page, in the previous spread. And then this also have like a number of goals and a number of strategies. So this is basically like a summary page for what is coming in the rest of the document. Jump into the next spread, then we have the first one of this, right? The first core theme, which is a sustainable community with strong connections. And basically the next chapters, they all follow the same structure. We have the element icons, the theme vision, the 4 goals, and in the next 2 spreads, the goals and the strategies are detailed. And each strategy also has their own icons, right, which were introduced here. So there are like 4 types of strategies: physical or design, regulatory or policy, programmatic, or capacity building. So for example, if we go into strategy 1A, we can see that that is like a policy strategy, right? Or the next one is a physical design strategy. So the idea is that someone that reads the document can easily see which type of intervention corresponds to which type of strategy. Maybe what we can add is like a little legend in each spread, if this is too difficult to remember.
Everybody go to the next one.
I think it looks great.
Okay.
Okay. And then we also have these metrics to measure progress. So this was a result of our last meeting in this like survey that we made where you voted for some metrics. We basically tallied like the votes for each metric, and we chose the 3 most voted. So for example, or 3 or 4 sometimes. For example, for this chapter, these are like the 4 metrics that ideally would measure the progress of these 4 goals. And then the next chapters follow the same structure. This is strategic and economic development. We also have like the icons, the theme vision, the goals, the strategies, and the metrics. Then we have chapter 8, which follows again.
Yes. Peter.
Sorry to stay on the pictures train, but the buildings in the center of that picture have a brand new facade and look awesome. So this photo just is really outdated.
Yes, Shelley.
I agree. I kind of feel like a lot of I'll help out in the picture department, because even like down by my square, we just did the whole square over.
Yeah.
I'd love to see
Love to
where
see.
it says chapter 7, this nice picture, if we're gonna get into, like, I'd love to see that there. You know, I think it's like a brighter, more engaging, like, opening.
This doesn't look.
In chapter 6, you mean? The one that is in chapter 7, in chapter 6.
Yeah, so the one that's in chapter 7, if everybody would agree, put it in chapter 6, replace it with this one, just because I
I
feel like.
agree.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It's
Chap-
okay. Take this beautiful picture.
Yeah?
And put it in the next
replace
one.
the kind of, the first one of this one right here.
Okay.
Take that one out, you know, replace it. It just is more vibrant. I think it shows more of a vibrant community. This on page
Yeah, that's a pretty.
33 on Sunset Lake. I think we can either find a better picture or put Pond Meadow in there, which can be beautiful, like absolutely beautiful pictures of Pond Meadow in the fall. Or, you know, it just can be very pretty.
I may even have some of those
Okay.
too.
And I agree about Chapter 8, that square's been done over, and also historic Braintree Square has been done over, so the facades look better, it looks more modern, more vibrant.
This looks very city.
Yeah. Just looks a little tired. Some of the pictures look a little tired.
I agree.
And I would love that first picture in Chapter 6, I think we said it was, maybe to be that kind of community picture of, maybe even like Braintree Day. Maybe someone has an awesome picture of Braintree Day, like people coming with their flags, you know. We're really proud of Braintree Day, and I'm sure there's some great pictures on the corner by
parade.
South Side, the parade. That would be an awesome one.
Even the road races.
Yeah, the road races or Braintree Day.
Oh, yeah, the road race is
Yeah.
good, too.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And then then we have chapter 9, which follows the same structure. The icons, the theme visions, the goals, the strategies, and the metrics. Same with chapter 10.
Yes, Liz.
What page are you on now?
We are in 52. This is 50.
Okay, can we go back to page 46?
46.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. 49.
My pages are
Mhm.
off.
Actually, I think I have my numbering mixed up. All right. Page 46, I believe it is, or 49. The metrics. We talked in the section on residential neighborhoods and housing options, and we talked about the priority being to protect and preserve the residential neighborhoods, and there's nothing in these metrics that addresses that, and I addressed that same issue at the last meeting, so I have some ideas for metrics that I would like to be considered. Number one, track developments of abutting residential neighborhoods, or track developments where residential neighborhoods that are abutting development have an increased buffer zone to 150 feet for any new development or any redo of a development, because we talk about increasing the buffer zone, and that would be one metric that we're looking at that protects residential neighborhoods. And then in addition to that, in another way to...
Can I make just one point? I just want everyone to be clear that any property that is currently developed that's already invading in that buffer zone is protected and non-conforming. So that would apply to, first we would need to change the bylaw. So we're creating a metric for an ordinance that we don't currently have. But the 150 feet would only apply if it was all, green now. I just want people to be clear that a lot of the situations that we have existed for a long, long time.
Comes down to the zoning.
Yeah.
Right, but we did talk about increasing the buffer zones as one of our items, so I just
I
thought
understand that. There's
that
just
would-
very little undeveloped land
Right,
in
but
those
when
areas.
when a redevelopment or a new proposal comes in,
Redevelopment has pre-existing rights. That's what I'm trying, I'm just
Okay.
trying to explain that I want people to understand that
Okay.
you can change the bylaw to 150, but if somebody's currently at 70, that's an existing condition
So
that
they're
they're allowed to
grandfathered?
continue. Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
In
Yes.
addition to that, when considering proposals that are before the town council and the planning board that have effect on residential neighborhoods, track the letters from the residents expressing concerns, and maybe make some type of a overall list of concerns, and incorporate these concerns in the decision-making process and the approval process. So I think the letters of concerns from the residents about their residential neighborhood should be tracked.
these metrics are to measure, progress and how we are, fulfilling the strategies in the master plan and how we're going to track that. I'm just confused at how that would, I'm
Well,
not sure.
I'm concerned because we talk about prioritizing and protecting residential neighborhoods, yet there isn't one metric that applies
These,
to that.
I wasn't at the last meeting. These metrics are, I don't think they're great. They're all related to veteran housing, and I don't want to, you know, we very well likely could construct veteran housing in this town, but we're not going to be pumping out units every year for veterans. So to track that is there's really not going to be tons to track. And then the second paragraph talks about ratio of annual new veteran and affordable and age-restricted versus annual new total units. So, I mean, this is a lot of tracking of the same thing. I mean, if you want to have a metric, then you would just make one tracking and you would track the different styles of, I mean, we already do that. Track all new housing types, period. And you would have what's affordable, what's veterans, what's age-restricted, you know, whatever categories you want to get into. But I just think these three metrics are kind of all the same thing in
Yep.
just different words.
So, yes, Liz? But in addition to that, I think there needs to be some tracking of concerns of residents when there is something that has a large impact on a residential neighborhood, because we talk about prioritizing and protecting our residential neighborhoods. So I think there needs to be some type of a metric in there to track that to make sure that that's what we're doing.
Julia?
So I can speak to what happens on the town council side of things. Councilors get emails, and then they read them, and they may or may not reply to all of them, depending on who they are and whether it affects their district in particular, or lots of things might fall into that decision. But I don't really know how those things are handled through the planning board, which is the other board that Liz is concerned about. So I guess, I mean, that's a question. And then another question is, I think what Liz is suggesting is maybe more like a strategy than a metric. And then a third question is like, what would we do with the data once we tracked it? You know, if the planning board decide, if 8,000 letters came into the planning board saying, we want, you know, something, and the planning board voted against it, what then would we do with that data? I think if voters are unhappy, the way that they react is through elections. And the planning board members, those people are appointed. So it reflects on the mayor, who appoints them. And town council members are elected every 2 years, and the mayor is elected every 4 years. And it seems to me like that's how we manage this. We hold people accountable. And if we tracked it, I don't know what we would do with that data. And the other thing is, I don't know how the planning board manages it.
So if I may, through the chair, so we get all kinds of comments. We get people come to the counter, we get obviously at the public hearing, and then we get written comments. When a project is likely to be approved by the planning board and it meets the criteria in the ordinance, 9 out of 10 times, the comments that come from abutters that are, we get a lot of just, we don't want this, and that's not a constructive comment, because that doesn't really, it just ends there. We don't want this, it ends. We get a lot of different comments that are very constructive and actually help us in the planning process, that create sidewalk connections, that plant trees in people's yards. So those end up as conditions in a decision. When we get comments for things that are not going anywhere, sometimes that material is used in support of a denial decision, which we have done also in the past. We have to heavily rely on technical data and engineering data as well when we make our decisions. So depending on the comment and depending on the project and what type of project it is and what stage it's in, those comments do different things. Like I said, sometimes they turn into conditions. When someone just says, I don't like this, I don't want this, that doesn't, what am I gonna do with that? It's just a negative comment. It ends there. It doesn't support any future action by the board, whether it's negative or positive. We keep all the comments in the record. We post them online. We get a lot of form letters that are, kind of basic in nature, and they all say the same thing, and, multiple people sign them. So, would we just create a chart and say we got 10 negative comments, we got 20 positive comments? I'm not sure and to your point, then what do we do with it? What is that measuring?
Is there a way to list the ones that are turned into, you just said the word, I just lost it. Not the strategy, the conditions? Is there a way to list the exact conditions that we're putting in to make sure that they...
That's all in print, that's all public, that's all in the decision's in the file, on file with the town clerk. It's a public document that then gets recorded against the deed. It's a very
Specific.
enforceable, oh yeah, it's very enforceable. It runs with that property forever until some alternate decision either supersedes it or that development is no longer part of that property. So the planning board decisions are very enforceable decisions that contain conditions that reflect the outcome of the public hearings.
David, did you have a comment?
My comment would be probably similar to some other comments. When we have letter writing campaigns, sometimes you could have 10,000 people write the exact same letter, and do we really want to take town employees and dedicate their time to keeping
Reading and
track of
memorizing.
10,000 letters that all say the same thing? At the federal level, there are special interest groups that get millions of things sent in to members of Congress. But we elect our members of Congress and tell them, we want you to do this job and use your judgment to act in the best interests of the people of the country. On a much smaller scale at the municipal level, we're doing the exact same thing. And just because there could be this big letter writing campaign doesn't mean I think we should be having members of the planning board or the town council or the mayor's office eliminating the job that they were hired to do and just count the number of letters. I want them to exercise their judgment regardless of how many letters they get for or against a particular subject, because that's the job that they were hired to do in the first place.
I agree. Yes, Liz?
I think my comment is getting distorted here. Whether we have 100 letters or whether you have 10 letters, the content of the letters is what's important. When people have concerns, quite often there's people in one neighborhood that are all impacted in one way. Say the traffic is all going to drive down one street from a development. That's a real valid concern. And so my point is, we talk in this document about preserving and protecting and prioritizing our residential neighborhoods. How are we going to do that? Does anyone else have a suggestion?
Yes, Shirley?
And I might be wrong, but I think in strategy 1B, when they say amend zoning requirements to strengthen protection for neighborhoods about potential developments, decreasing cut allowances as development transitions closer to smaller scale residential neighborhoods, I think that's what we kind of discussed, because that would change like a actual zoning, right? Because that was something that was a goal, which kind of goes to what we're trying to get, right?
Right, right. And I get that, so where is there a metric to measure that? How do we measure that we are doing this? We have to be accountable for what we say we're going to do, and that's what I'm looking to see.
Yes, David?
The answer that I would propose is the people who are making the decisions are accountable to the people who vote. And if the people who are making the decisions are ignoring the input from residents to the dissatisfaction of the majority of the residents, then change will happen. If, on the other hand, they're making decisions that they believe are in the best interests of the entire town, even if it is against the interests of a minority of the town, well, their job is to try to do the best for the entire town, not the minority of the town. And sometimes the people on the short end of the stick aren't happy, but it's in the best interest of the town. So for instance, if we need a new school and the senior citizens are up in arms about it because I don't have kids in the school system anymore, I don't want to pay higher taxes, but the decision made by the people who we elect is we're going to build a new school and we're going to charge the people in the town the cost of the new school. If the senior citizens had the majority vote, maybe they could stop it from happening. But if they don't have the majority, then the school gets built.
And I think, yes, Liz?
Once again, but we're talking about metrics. We're not talking about voting right now. In this, we have metrics and we have strategies, and I'm just wondering what the metrics are. I mean, you could say that about any chapter in this document. You know, it's all about voting.
I think Melissa had hit the nail on the head with saying that the metrics were listed in the conditions of the property that was listed for anybody that was abutting, not the denial ones, but for the ones that actually needed to be in the zoning. So they list those in the property. How can we make that more public? How do we word that? That, you know.
It's beyond public. It's
Right,
a
that's what I'm
it's
saying. Like, how can we
it's-
justify that? Yes, Shelley?
I don't know if this is a Flavio question, but you're listening to everything we're saying. You write these reports. How would you amend these metrics, or how would you word them now listening to us to make them reflect what we're trying to come across?
The thing is that here we show like the amount of strategies that we have, right? And I think it is like very difficult to reflect 21 different metrics to achieve core theme 1 or 20 different metrics to achieve core theme 5. So what we did is like we let you vote on the metrics, and in fact I can show you the document where this is after the last meeting, and these are the votes. And these are the people that answered like that survey or that
Yep.
working sheet that we did like last meeting, and these are the metrics that were the most voted. So, and this is where they come from.
But to measure progress based on what we're saying, I mean, because there's nothing in here that really talks about amending zoning, right? So metrics to measure progress on page 49. Should we put a metrics as, you know, review zoning regulations? Is that a metrics that we should be? I really don't know. Because I agree with you, Melissa. I don't think these three things, they don't go really with a
They're
lot
just
of
put in
this.
there.
And I don't really think those are things that would really be tracking. Like if I was to hand this and someone saw this big green blurb with the white lettering and they think these are their three actual bullet points that reflect everything on this page, those three bullet points don't reflect what we're trying to get across on this page.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we said that like incorrectly in our last meeting, then I apologize, but we somehow have to change those three bullet points, because if someone's only going to read those three things on that page, it doesn't summarize what's on this page.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So if I may, through the
Yeah.
chair, so the goal one, which I think, Liz, is kind of what you're focused on, the protecting neighborhoods and enhancing community engagement. You know, why don't we try to come up with a metric on how to address that? And I think that the metrics, I think the three that are listed in the green box can be combined into one. And I think that I understand what you're saying about the letters, but tracking the letters and writing down, we got this many letters about this and this, that's not protecting anything. So we need to measure how we protect, not how many people tell us to protect. We need to track what we're doing as a community to live up to these strategies.
I agree.
I don't have a suggestion precisely on how to measure the extent to which we are increasing protection of neighborhoods. But this also calls for enhancing community engagement. And I think we could measure, there are numbers, that's a little bit more numerical. You can count the number of people who come to meetings. That can be tracked. You can count the number of people who are following a Facebook page or the circulation of a newsletter if we had one. You can count the number of posts that we make and say it should be more. It should be more. There should be more outreach. I think those are trackable data points that you could use to compare your performance this year against last year. But I agree that I am a little stuck. I don't know what to suggest as far as how to measure the extent to which we are protecting neighborhoods.
Peter?
Just to comment to Julia and then some ideas for Liz. Julia, I like what you're saying, but I just don't like the government tracking people going to meetings, and in Facebook groups, I feel like that's a slippery slope. And then, Liz, what about metrics along the lines of like the number of acres in residential A and residential B, and tracking that, because that would show encroachments for commercial uses if that changes over time. You could track the number of conversions of single families to multifamily houses and see if those type of changes take place over time. You could track the number of injuries of pedestrians in residential neighborhoods and see if that relates to
Car accidents.
and traffic problems.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
that's
could
a good
track
idea.
congestion, but injuries we track.
Yeah, injuries, but also even car accidents that get reported through the police department.
That's already tracked. They already track it.
So do those metrics,
I
is that
think
what you're looking for?
that's part of something that could be used to make sure that a neighborhood is being kept
Staying
safe. Yeah. Maybe even traffic counts through residential neighborhoods.
So what we can do maybe is like,
Yeah, why don't we just,
no, and the three, just to end up that, like those three, summarize them to one, and then add another one that, I don't know, maybe like we can keep in touch over email, or do you want to decide
Yeah.
right now, like which one do you want to
Yeah.
add?
we'll rework the green box, then we need one about neighborhood protection, and then we need one how we're going to improve our outreach.
Okay.
Is that what I've, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Liz, everybody?
Oh, I didn't notice there was a Braintree Day one.
What'd you say?
There's already a Braintree Day.
Oh, photo?
Yeah.
That's all right. There might be some, I can double, we did a deep dive to all the departments for pictures, and I would welcome anybody that's got any great ones if they want to send them our way. We'd be happy to include them.
Okay, and then we're going to chapter 10.
Yes, Liz?
Do we really need 2 pictures of the MBTA train tracks? I think that's kind of overkill, too. We have a picture earlier.
Yeah, we have one of the red line station, and then
Yeah.
this is the commuter red line. To be honest, like, we don't have a strong preference for any photo. Like,
Okay.
we just like did it with the pictures that we had like available.
I just don't think we need
Yeah.
two of the
I
MBTA.
like the new
We can change
Braintree police, the wall. The wall at the Braintree police where they just did the stone wall with the flowers, it looks really good, right around the Rotary.
I just wanted to kind of, if I may, through the chair, on chapter 10, and I know I wasn't at the August meeting, but the metrics in this section is average number of days that a complaint about a service takes to be resolved. So we have the I'm not going to say it right. Yeah, and that's kind of a thing that monitors stuff, and sometimes things are a quick resolve, and sometimes it's, you know, an act of God. So I just want to, there's different levels of things that come in. People will say, oh, my trash didn't get picked up, and then they call and it's the next day. And then someone says, I want new sidewalks on my street. And that's like, so I think we need to kind of drill down a little bit more. And then the same thing, average number of days to get a return call from a town office. Like, who's gonna track that? Like, who's, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to understand how that's gonna be done, and who's gonna do
How to
it.
track the progress of the returns.
Yeah,
Any suggestions?
and these are both like almost the same thing. And when we look at this, when we look at, again, the chapter, expanding and modernizing town surfaces, facilities, and infrastructure, and the two metrics are about
Return calls.
pretty much the, I think we can do better, respectfully, I think we can do better than that. I think we can track that better. We can track, if we're trying to, you know, investment, community investment, where we're spending money, whether it's through our capital plan or through community preservation, you know, what type of investment is the town making in itself is I think would be something that would be demonstrative of improvements, if that's a term. But I think that those metrics probably need a little bit of work as well. Yeah.
So I agree that if you look at how we're spending our money, that certainly is a quantifiable way of identifying, you know, how and where we're making improvements. But, I mean, many of the things that we've discussed, that is already fully available information.
Yeah.
That's not a change.
I know. I'm just trying to think of, like, how would you measure investment? How much do you spend? And while all that data is there, you know, are people tuned in, and are we tuned in as a government on spending the money where it should be spent? You know, if you go back and you look at historical spending and capital plans and things like that, you know, are those dollars going to the things that people are complaining about, or the things that people feel should be improved? And that's always an interest. There's a lot of infrastructure issues in the town that we need to spend money on that aren't necessarily, you know, no one goes, oh, I just got a new water line on my street. Like, that's not something people get overly excited about, but it is a huge expenditure for the town. So there's a lot of things that aren't cool and pretty, and that people can actually see and say, oh, wow, look at this great new thing here that we have to spend money on. So I think it's really, if you kind of think about it, and maybe we should track it in categories. You know, what are we spending on beautification? What are we spending on aesthetics? What are we spending on infrastructure? Maybe break it down into different categories and see, you know, are we spending the money in conjunction with what people wanted to see in the master plan?
So if we created a historical comparison of spending to track where we're spending in various categories that were established, that would be a very valuable resource, because what residents and even counselors can get right now, is like the raw data. This number for this budget line item, this number for this budget line item. And you can compare it in any given year to the year before and maybe the year before that, but certainly not beyond.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think that would be actually quite helpful.
Then the next chapter, it's about implementation. So it's only one spread that basically recommends the creation of a master plan implementation committee and kind of like details what are like the roles of this committee. And finally, we have an acknowledgements section that we have to do. And that's the master plan report.
If I may, through the chair, so I think we need to kind of think about the matrix a little bit more. There was a lot of really good comments tonight. I'm going to encourage the members that weren't here tonight as well to send in some comments. And now that we've had this discussion, if anyone has any ideas for different matrix or whatever, they can just send them over. And we'll coordinate with Flavio and Jen to really kind of fine tune those. Sometimes you leave the meeting, you get an idea, or you're thinking about some I don't know about you folks, but wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning with seven great ideas. Just jot them down or shoot them over in an email, and we'll try to put something together. Because I think it's important to have good metrics that produce indicators that we can then pivot from and put into place or shift and change the way we're doing things, whether it's spending, whether it's a process. There's various, obviously, multiple departments in the town that have different functions and do different things, but there is a lot of overlap in some of those, and especially when we forecast and think about the future, and our capital plan is a 5-year plan, that it's important to kind of, look at what we've done in the past. Where have we spent money? Where has it served us well? Where has it benefited us? Where is it worth reinvesting in something? Those types of things. A lot of that, to the counselor's point, you see the year before, and you might think, gee, we're not really spending that much here, but maybe the fourth year before that, there was a ton of money. So I think that's important for people to kind of, we did, for our community preservation annual hearing the other night, we did a graph that showed since when CPA started, how much the town put in and what the state match was, and then the total funds. So you could follow that all the way from 2003 to 2023 and see, how the state funds went up or down, and then our total grant. And the committee loved it. They were like, oh, this is great. Now we can kind of see, because they're always curious how much is coming in, what are we spending, and there it was just in a graph. So sometimes that's helpful to, you could have your total expenditures, and then you could have the colors next to it. This much in infrastructure, this much in services, this much in the general budget, things like that, so people can get an idea of what went up, what went down, where do we maybe, oh, well, that's why we have a problem here, because we haven't spent any money here. You'd be able to easily see those things.
Sorry, Melissa. Yeah, no, just.
No, go ahead, jump in.
No, when you were just talking about like the graphs and stuff going back to like the building department must have some sort of software that shows how many permits have been pulled, what the category of those are, right, by the year.
They have a building permit software, yes.
Because I'm just thinking in my mind, as you were saying that, when we're talking about community and like development, because part of that in there also was about developing the Ivy Street corridor or whatever, wouldn't that be a matrix of seeing how many permits were pulled for either new development, what kind of development, what was new build, what was, I mean, I'm not saying like every permit of like someone putting an addition or a new toilet in the house. I'm saying like, you know, things over a certain amount, like buildings.
Yeah, I can't answer to what type of reports, but I mean, I know every year I prepare for the mayor all of that information. X amount of square feet of this, X amount of that, X amount of,
Because wouldn't that start telling us how many residential, how much commercial, new office space, like what area? And that could also either be mapped and/or just shown that we're going towards our goal of.
yeah, I do that every year. I separate it out from new, redevelop, a lot of stuff is redevelopment, so it's not necessarily new square footage, but, a lot of that's already happening.
If I may, what if we did something like a bi-yearly graph that was released to the public that showed these things, that did give the measurement? I mean, I know it's a little bit of extra work, but if you do it every year for the mayor, what if we cut it down to twice? What if we do it twice a year? Just to give the community some idea of tracking what's going on, in a simple graph.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we're acting like we're doing tons here, respectfully. I mean, every 6 months is just not, and the problem is
But even if it's yearly.
it takes like a while, so somebody could, like, we could have 4 or 5 applications that come in January or February, but those aren't approved until July, and then when they start construction. So there's some different periods. I mean, we typically, and what we used to do, which was awesome, and some people in this room will remember, we used to have the annual report. They stopped doing the annual, I still look at the reports from, I've got them all in my office. It had everything that went on at town meeting, summaries of the boards, it highlighted big projects, it had all the budget money. When we switched our form of government, they stopped doing them.
Why can't we add that back into our
Yeah,
metric?
that's not my call, but that's something that,
Well,
yeah.
can't that be a matrix
We
that
used to
maybe
have
we
to
put in there? It
prepare,
sounds
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
If
why
that's
not? I mean,
something
I
that was
think that-
helpful for the town, people working in the town, it was helpful for the town people, why couldn't that be a matrix that gets?
We
better?
used to have to give
consolidates.
all the information, it listed every board, all the members, at that time it was town meeting members as well. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there.
It sounds like a
I
snapshot, like a
I
snapshot. of
still
the
go
year.
back and use them all the time. I think the last one was it was probably around 2007 or 2008. But,
Well, in an effort, what people keep on talking about is transparency, right? Or that they want more information, and if that was a snapshot of what was going on in the town and people enjoyed that.
Tons, everything
Why wouldn't
that
that be
went on.
something that we asked for that, because that's a department by department?
Liz?
That's what I was just going to ask. Who would be responsible for coordinating that now?
it used to be the selectmen, so it will likely be the mayor.
Or the town council?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what it is. I just remember we would say, get this together for the annual report. And honestly, too, even in my budget, I have all of that. If someone asks me, oh, how many permits is Melissa, or how many notices of intent, I have my staff, I have all the dollars collected. So a lot of that information is, sometimes people don't ask, sometimes they ask, I always want to be like what we've collected in fees and things like that. There's a lot of information out there. And that, like I said, that all used to go into the annual report. So, I mean, if there's a movement to bring that back, it's a very, very useful document. Like, really useful.
Maybe that might be something on the implementation page that we might be able to add?
It is here, in fact.
An annual report?
In bullet point number 4.
That might solve a lot of our metrics.
Well, that's kind of like a scaled down version.
Document progress. So, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't looking at it that way, but I guess annual reports per department or per category or whatever it may be, but okay, yeah, that's great.
It would, yeah, and it would like, so, I mean, if we had it for this year, it would say, started a new water treatment plant. Like, there's so many different
South Middle
things.
School open.
Yeah, there's so many different things that would go into that. So maybe, I'm trying to think, could we work that into like metrics, or should we, let me think about that one. And again, I don't want to commit the town to anything, because it wouldn't be my call. but-
Flavio already did because it's in his implementation
Well,
plan.
I think that was just for the implementation committee. I don't think the implementation committee would have all of that. But yeah, I mean, the old one used to list all of the town meeting stuff. So there would, be a section on orders and things like that, just kind of, I mean, we didn't really have a website then either, or a ton of information on the web. There's a ton of information in the website, but it's not like centralized into
People
like,
don't go searching for it.
into
They
one,
wanna know.
into one document.
To
Yeah,
have it consolidated and just easy for somebody to look at is gonna help them.
yeah, I
figure
use them
out
all the
where it
time.
is.
Like, I can't tell you how, and people even come into my office and say, I know you have all the annual reports. So, we always know ballpark within a 3-year range, but if we have to nail something down to a date, we look to the annual report.
I think if this committee could be responsible for launching an initiative to return the annual report to Braintree, that would be a major contribution to the town. It is an invaluable resource. It is unfortunate that we don't have it anymore. I think we should.
A second.
Okay, so my main takeaways of this meeting are that we're going to have to touch base about 3 things: photos, metrics, and at some point we're going to have to choose what we're going to do with the acknowledgement section. Maybe we had like a very, very brief discussion last meeting about the acknowledgements, but we should decide what we're going to do with this. So also feel free like to send me emails like over the next few weeks about like these 3 things, right? Like photos, metrics, and acknowledgements.
Can you remind me, was that when we either said, well, I know the letter, we were trying to determine who the letter was going to be from, right? We decided that the mayor was going to write the
We
letter.
decided the major, I think.
And then the acknowledgements, just remind me, what did other towns typically do?
I have the examples here.
Yep. I just don't remember, sorry.
I know one group that has to be acknowledged, BCAM,
Yes. Yeah.
without a doubt.
Oh,
have
they were here
been
some
here
late nights.
faithfully for all of these meetings.
I can't see that. Can you just zoom it out, zoom in, just so we can see?
Yeah.
I can. Is this better?
So we got the master.
I can also zoom in.
So it's like the planning board, the committee, all the consultants. Oh my God, I know some of those people in the picture.
Town planner,
And then,
The residents.
Melissa and Connor.
So we did have a lot of town staff that participated in the workshops and the road show.
Yep.
So we would like to acknowledge them. I think we should definitely include a general statement about the residents and their participation in the forums. And
Surveys,
in the, and the road, the technical committees. Obviously, Jen Golson and her team, and RKG, and Kittleson. And then if we wanted to take a group photo
Yeah.
of the master plan steering committee.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I like that.
And we can help Flavio and Jen with all those names of the town. They have a lot of it because they've reached out to the departments and stuff, but we can help populate that as well.
Okay, perfect. Yep, and that's it.
And that's it? Any other comments, questions? Yes, sir. Can you come to the podium? Thank you. And can you state your name?
Dan Clifford, Town Councilor, former Town Councilor, retired, 265 St. Clair Street, Braintree. I'm going to just start from behind because that's where we left off, and it's probably fresh in everyone's mind. As far as the discussion around community safety, which was up around page 49, and a lot of time was spent on it, I would ask, or I would share this with you. And I was here at the beginning of this committee being formed, and I said the same thing that I'm going to say now. Because as you were talking about it, it's become clear that you're really on the right road now, after some discussions tonight. Because if there are engineers here, or project managers here, or people who do projects, they know that there are a set of deliverables which would be analogous to your strategies. Within those deliverables, there are dependencies. How are we going to make these deliverables come to fruition? Is it going to take money? Is it going to take a department within the town to work with in order to make that happen? And has that department signed up for that task? Do they have the resource bandwidth to take it on? These are questions that have to be asked by every project manager. Because if there aren't solutions to the dependencies, your deliverables will fail every time. So let me just make a comment on, and it's a positive one. I hope all of this is positive. But when you talk about community or protecting neighborhoods, and the last thing you spoke to were annual reports. I agree with Director Santucci Rossi. Those reports were wonderful. They did stop in 2008 after the new government came on. For whatever reason, I don't know. But I would say that that alone would be a terrific deliverable for this committee to reinstate annual reports. To that end, I will say this, having been a counselor, there are a requirement for each chairman of each of the 10 committees to write an annual report on the work that they have done during the course of the year. If it's the Veterans and Elder Affairs Committee. A report gets written on this is what we did, this is what we were successful at, this is what we're going to carry on. The same thing holds true for the Ways and Means Committee. The same thing holds true for Rules and Ordinances. Same thing holds true for Highway. For each of the 10 departments, the town council is responsible and obligated by their own rules to write these annual reports. Now, the disappointing part, they don't get written to the largest extent. If you go there and look, much like 2008, they don't get done. So the second thing I would suggest is that you ask the town council to live up to their obligation to do their annual reports. Once the 10 reports are done, then a cover letter can get slapped on it by the president of the council saying we had a banner year and we're happy that we were able to do all of this stuff of value for the town of Braintree. That's what you hope is done. That then can be compiled and put in to the annual report. Easy peasy. So I offer that as something that I hope you bring forward, because it's a no-brainer. And you know what? Government, much of government, is not held accountable. These reports at least would hold accountability and transparency to the work that's being done in those 10 committees. Those 10 committees are important to the town. They're important to veterans. They're important to elders. They're important to the highway department, your roads. They're important for the rules and ordinances and the new bylaws for rezoning. All of that stuff is important and valuable work. And you know what? You don't see it today. So please, I ask you, bring it forward. Thank you. Other than that, I would like to just say another thing is crime. Our communities are increasing in the crime that's affecting them. And that, I hope, will be part of the master plan, and maybe right there in the community piece. There are ways to measure it. You've got the police reports. You've got neighborhood watches. The North Braintree Civic Association has been terrific in bringing issues forward with solutions. It's easy to bring a problem forward. It isn't always easy to bring a solution and offer a solution. When I was in corporate America, our teams knew that our president would not accept anything but excellence and substantial solutions to a problem. She would say, do not come into my office with a problem unless you have a solution with you. So for each of the strategies that are being applied to each of the themes, there has to be a clear, not vague, clear, substantive goal. That strategy is a goal. How am I going to get there? I hope I'm not preaching to the choir, but I do know BCAM is rolling, and just possibly some of the folks at home will be happy with more substantial goals. So I know that there are goals here in the strategies. I think if you look at them, when you see the word, for example, opportunity, 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 in each and every one of the strategies, I think it's on page 13. Let's just check. Page 49.
Twenty.
Page 20, I think you're looking
What is it?
20, Dan.
at. Page
20? All right, if you have it, then that's good for me. I don't have it in front of me. But if you look down those strategies, each and every single one of them talk about the opportunity. Show me where it says, this is what we're after, and this is how we can measure it for success. Opportunities abound. Opportunities are words that you can't grab hold of unless there's a substantive value.
That's the land use map.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
on page
Oh,
20.
sorry, maybe I'm reading.
I don't,
21.
I
I'm,
think
I
the
have 21.
transformation area, like opportunity on Wood Road, opportunity at the
It's
South Shore
page
Plaza.
21 in mine.
All right, let me get there.
but those aren't the
Those aren't the
those aren't
strategies.
strategies, though.
No.
I was looking at the strategies, and I guess I,
What page again? I'm sorry.
I think he was looking
I
at
think,
21.
I think you're looking at page 20, where like the transformation areas,
see.
investment.
Oh, yeah, I circled all the opportunity areas. Okay, transformational areas, yeah, you're right.
those aren't strategies, though. The strategies are pretty,
Set.
they're pretty action-orientated.
All right, take me to one if you would, because I'm
I
having
will,
trouble.
sir, I will. Page 30, under resilience and sustainability, adopt and implement a climate change plan. That's pretty clear.
Page 30.
It's
Page 30.
31 in here.
I'm under goal 2. Strategy 2C, adopt and implement. That's pretty straightforward. Update the 2020 energy reduction plan. Create incentives. I mean, those are pretty, you know, some of the zoning things aren't as hard and fast because I think the committee didn't want them hard and fast. They wanted them to be like, look at this, like for example, the dark sky one, you know, consider a zoning amendment to apply to dark sky. But these ones are not, I don't know, I guess I was just trying to find what you were talking about, I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I'm trying to get to page 30. It must be missing in this one. Is it anywhere along sustainable community with strong connections?
Yes, the next, correct.
The next page?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, that one.
Okay, so
They're two-sided pages.
31.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the strategies. Just if you would, Director Santucci Rousey, would you take me through that again?
Yes, I was under goal 2.
Yep.
And looking at some of these, we have 2C, adopt and implement a climate change plan. The one under it, update the 2020 energy reduction plan. I mean, those are pretty,
Okay, so
yeah.
let me just ask this then. So we have a goal to adopt and implement a climate change plan. Who's going to do that? And how much is it going to cost? And is it achievable? Now, I say that not to put anybody to respond, because
That's for the next committee, so they wouldn't be responding tonight.
so what I'm saying is, it's easy. I mean, I agree with Director Santucci, Rossi, but I'm going to tell you, if I'm the guy that gets this handed to on the next committee, I'm going to look at this and say, strategy 2C. Okay, this is my goal, and it asked me to adopt and implement A climate change plan. Why aren't I being asked to boil the freaking ocean? You know, if you got this, what are you going to do with it? Who are you going to work with? How much is it going to cost? And at the end, what's the measurement? How do you measure it? So listen, thank you for letting me spend some time here. But let me also say, please, make these strategies, which are goals, make them substantive so that the next guy that you hand this to, and I've seen it happen before, committees do their work, they do a report, and they toss it. Sorry, Bill. They toss it over the fence to someone else. They haven't helped that guy. They've given him an unbelievable task by which he doesn't know what it's going to cost. He doesn't know who he's supposed to be working with. I would ask this committee, and I hope that it's more well attended than it is tonight. I would ask this committee to be more substantive. As grand as it is to say, let's create a climate plan. I hear President Biden talk about that all the time. How are you going to do it, Billy boy? We need to do the same thing. We need to give the next committee a fair chance to get this thing done. So I would ask you, please, put some assumed costs in and put some departments or other organizations that you feel would be valuable to meet the goal at that end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Clifford.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm good.
Okay. Can we adjourn the meeting? Is everybody
Call for a vote to adjourn.
call for a vote to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Beautiful. Fourth, fifth. Yay. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.